Welcome back, y'all. Acquire and operate. We are building a portfolio of niche, enduring, dope, nasty, cool, small, vertical B2B SaaS companies. And we're doing it for the love of the game. We're buying them and growing them. And so far, so good. We've been at it. So we've got some good stuff, some news to announce once some of that stuff becomes public, but it's been an exciting time. Obviously, Kjael and I are dragging ass this Friday because there has been no shortage of action in our world. So we're just going to just quick disclaimer at the front end here. But we're going to bring it. We're going to bring the heat. We're going to rally because we got some good stuff to chat about today. So, agenda-wise, headline, the 12 KPIs to objectively size up any SaaS firm. And well, there's a lot to unpack there. And so I guess agenda-wise, we will frame this a little bit in terms of like base rates, KPIs, objectivity, why it's important. And then we'll go into the KPIs themselves and just talk through them, and they're organized by domain or by function. And we hope that this becomes something that's very useful for our tribe, for those playing the game. And so to kick off, I have a quote from Dalio. And I'm maybe I drink too much of the Dalio Kool-Aid, honestly, but here it is. Truth, more precisely, an accurate understanding of reality is the essential foundation for producing good outcomes. And I just love that. It's kind of like the person who has the most accurate grasp on the physics, on the reality around them, is usually going to win the game because they understand the rules the best. And that's just yeah. If you got something.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of like the example that we touch on sometimes with the guy who just wants to get bigger in the gym or lift heavier in the gym. He has to identify like which point of his body he needs to strengthen first. Like if it's your wrist and you can't deadlift, or if you're trying to deadlift and your wrists are kind of weak, it's like, okay, maybe start with some curls first. It's like just understanding where you're at in your current state and where you want to get to. Having that like truth and being honest about where you're at, that can really accelerate your growth.
Totally. And there was a lot of stuff in like theory of constraints. Like there's a lot of stuff that we've jammed on.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, okay, you just look around and determine reality. And it's like, the problem is that humans, and there's been so much on this, thinking fast and slow, there's just all these cognitive biases and honestly kind of flaws in our wiring.
That based on our experiences.
At a minimum, like you're seeing the world through your eyeballs.
Yep.
And if you just boil it down to relativity, your reality is defined by the point of view where you're standing, so mountains only look big when you're standing up next to them. And so in your mind, you're like, oh, that's like a little thingy out there. And it's like, no, that's just from your point of view. So truth is super elusive to humankind. And so I think it's very, very important, probably generally in just navigating life, that we seek out objectivity and we use data to kind of substantiate, to kind of harden our points of view. And then as you just alluded to, we have to like form opinions on a relative basis, right? So you're only tall if you're in a room full of short people, right? Or
your viewpoints,
right? Or so everything is relative. And so this table, which we'll walk through, is an attempt at kind of splitting the atom, which is like, all right, like what are the things we can measure that are generally universal across this kind of, I guess, profile of a company. Cool. We have a general sense of like, hey, here are the 12 things we want to measure. Back to like the fitness thing. It's like, if I know how much you can squat, bench, pull up, and deadlift, I've got a good sense of your level of strength and fitness, right? Like those are like, what's like a fitness test, right? Or what are the components? What are the muscle groups that should give you a good proxy? Or if you can only get one, what would it be, right? And it's like, how much squat, right? How much can you squat? That's a lot of activation across all these different muscle chains. So here we're trying to size up all those things and kind of, so we have these established KPIs that we think are the most overarching, the most universally applicable to, again, a specific profile of company. And then from there, you go into you look at the business and you kind of understand their base rates for performance in these areas. So you got these 12 things. We'll just continue with the fitness metaphor. What do you bench? What do you squat? How many pull-ups can you do? Boom, boom, boom. Okay, great. And then you can benchmark that performance against a comparable human. Well, it turns out for someone who's 5'9", 170 pounds, that your bench is light, you're squatting much more, and you can do way more pull-ups. And it's like, okay, so if we want to kind of round up your weaknesses, we're going to fixate on your bench. We're going to not touch squats, right? The worst thing we can do is go super hard at squats because you're 99th percentile in squatting.
Yeah, now it's diminishing returns.
And then, hardcore diminishing returns, and we've lost all the leverage in terms of improvement thresholds, right? I'll leave it at that. I don't want to context this to death. So let's jump in. And I guess a few disclaimers. So these KPIs assume sales-led growth. And we kind of anchored around like 15K average contract value, or ACV, and firms doing between 1 and 5 million in ARR. And these benchmarks are basic as hell. The benchmarks are so basic. So make sure that I would just use this as kind of inspiration and then fine tune the hell out of it for your context. So if it's like, well, actually, we go after, I'm operating kind of a SaaS catered to SMB. It's a free trial. So then just think your sales velocity, quote unquote, which we'll get into, is a function of your funnel. Web traffic that converts to trial signups, that converts to paying users, and a lot of the other stuff is pretty applicable. It's mostly the sales motion that you need to kind of tune for your context. So let's get busy with it. Wonder, I blew this up nice for us, buddy. Yeah, let's do this one. Okay, can you see that? All right, Kjael?
Yeah, that's all.
All right, so first thing to call out, so these are segmented. We've got 12 total, I believe. So we've got 4 sales metrics, 2 customer-centric metrics, 2 product, and then 4 support. And again, these are supposed to be like, you can also use like a tailor, right? It's like, what are the measurements that a tailor needs to tune up a suit for you? It's like, well, the shoulders, arm length, leg length, and your waist. Inseam, right? So that's what we're going for. I'll see if any other metaphors find me here. So in the sales front, and what you'll notice is that these culminate in sales velocity, and some are distributions, I think, or actually I punted the distributions, but you could introduce distributions here as well. So as an example, the first one is opportunities created per month. So the number of new sales opportunities generated per month. In the 1 million ARR range, you're shooting for 20 to 25 per month. As that moves up, that expands. So when you're closer to 5 million, you're looking for 100 to 115. And this is a function of a bunch of industry benchmarking and B2B SaaS studies. And that's kind of the tip of the spear. I mentioned distributions are also interesting. You might want to understand opportunities by channel. And one big disclaimer, holy smokes, that we need to get out of the front end is, how clean is the average lower middle market SaaS companies' data, Kev?
Let's say about not. Just to say, well.
Yes. So that is a huge disclaimer that before you spin your wheels in this exercise, it's worthy of you to just generally kind of assess data hygiene and record keeping. And it's like, is this exercise even worth it? And I think, and it depends. It's like, 1.0, do you have a CRM? 2.0, are you managing the sales function in your CRM? No? Okay, then we're probably, a lot of these sales velocity kind of pipeline metrics aren't going to be, they're not there. They don't exist. So you're just going to have to get subjective answers from the human, right? Hey, how long does a sales cycle typically take? Cool. Opportunities are measured somewhere. So even if they're in a spreadsheet, just pray to God that they have like a date added in there.
Yep.
Anyway, so that's a very important thing, is like, first size up the data hygiene and kind of the record keeping rigor of the firm before you go ham on this.
Yeah, I'd like to add, like, as we always say, you can't report on what you can't measure, and then what you can't measure, what you don't have visibility into. So even if you do have a CRM, chances are you're probably kicking that data hygiene conversation down the line, because let's be honest, most small to medium-sized firms, that's just not a priority to put resources and funds to right now. You're already strapped for resources. But to be able to measure your true performance, just understand how we perform from a base rate and a benchmarking perspective. You got to clean your data 100%.
Yeah. And you can get manual as hell with it, where it's like, let's just go in your inbox. And I'm just going to, let's do some kind of export, and let's just look for it, like new contacts that have entered your inbox. And we'll assume, some percentage of those are new opportunities or whatever. Like, you can back into it and you can just get a spreadsheet out and do it.
Yeah, go to your bank account. When did that invoice clear? Cool. Go back to your email. When did the conversation start? All right, that's going to be our sales cycle.
Yeah, totally. Or even like, when was the first meeting on my calendar? When was the close? And the calendar is an outstanding source of truth, honestly.
First year.
Yeah, totally. Because back to like the conversation, the time is like the true finite resource that you're managing, in any context. So opportunities created per month. Then we get into sales cycle time. That's how long it takes from when an opportunity is created to when it's closed and converted into one customer. And that's 12. Oh, I need to update that. That's 12 to 24. Did I have that in months? Oh, I need to update that. So 12 to 24 weeks. So that's, kind of 3 to 6 months. And again, we're kind of assuming middle market B2B SaaS, about a 15K contract value. The more SMB, the tighter the sales cycle. The more enterprise, the more prolonged it is. And so in some, I think in enterprise, you're looking 9 to 12 months because you're selling big entities. There's a ton of people involved in the decision. You're doing proof of concepts. You're doing multiple, demos. You're navigating procurement at the tail end to get the contract done. There's legal reviews. There's a whole lot of action there. And then we got win rate, which is pretty straightforward. You have 10 opportunities and you win 3 of them, your win rate is 30%. So that's the percentage of opportunities that convert to 1 deals. And then sales velocity, which we jammed on last week, I think. It's all a blur. It is basically a culmination of those things. So you have kind of the number of opportunities times your win rate, times the average contract value gives you like the mass in terms of revenue. And then the cycle time gives you the velocity and how quickly you book that revenue. And we use the car, which I've gotten a lot of love for that metaphor. Honestly, people are like, wow, I love this metaphor. And I was like, really? That was kind of whack, but
no, it was great. Where the rubber meets the road.
Where the rubber, your grip on the road is your sales process. Or no, that's your win rate. How quickly you get from point A to point B. And so velocity is the culmination of those things. So I think you want to be in this one, you're punching at about 11,000 per month on the low end for 1 million ARR, and then you're punching closer to 160K per month as you get into that 5 million threshold. Pretty straightforward. Those are the sales things. Then you can get more myopic, and as we spoke about, you can start to look at AE kind of unit level productivity, and this one is probably not available to you in our context because like you can't measure macro pipeline type stuff. Very unlikely that you can then kind of drill down it to the account executive level, understand distribution of those metrics across AEs, establish a mean, etc. But you could go there if you want to. Then stuff gets pretty straightforward from here. I guess it's all pretty straightforward, and that's the hope.
Just giving you a basic framework to start from. That's the hope.
100%. So we've got logo retention rate. So this is, if you've got 10 customers and it depends on your context more. If you're more MRR, monthly recurring revenue, you want to measure it monthly. If you're more ARR, annual recurring revenue, you want to measure it on an annual basis. But if you've got 100 customers at the beginning of some period, and you have 100 at the end of the period, you have 100% logo retention rate. And so that's tough to retain all logos. That's what you want to do. Obviously, SaaS retention is the name of the game. In the 1 million AR, it's closer to 85 to 90%, and this is on like an annual basis. And then as you move up market, I'm not sure I totally agree with this sentiment, but those retentions rates should improve, according to most sources out there. So then you're punching at 90 to 95. I think if you're north of 95%, you're feeling really, really good because that is a good validation that there's strong product market fit. The product's delivering utility to the users. It's sticky, and that's what we want. Net revenue retention starts to get very interesting because now it's less about the logos and it's more about the revenue that those logos contribute and how much of that revenue is retained in an established time period. And this is where it gets cool because you can have, it's like, wait, 110% net revenue retention? How can you do that? And it's like, that's the name of the game, obviously, but that's in the B2B SaaS context. That's when you're executing expansion motions. So your customers are not only sticking with you, they're consuming more of your products, new products, they're upgrading to pricier plans, etc. And that's where you start to see B2B SaaS absolutely rip. So net revenue retention is what everybody's very jazzed about. That's like, people fixate on that for obvious reasons. That's the customer stuff. So that's basically like how leaky is the boat.
Consistent.
Then we get into product and time to first value, the aha moment. There's some different verbiage for this one, but this is the time it takes for a new user to kind of experience that first significant value moment. And you want this to be as tight as humanly possible. In a trial acquisition motion or a freemium acquisition motion, you want people to hit that aha moment, that time to value in minutes. In more of like a B2B kind of sales-led thing, we're measuring it in days. And again, this is one that I disagree with, but the whole world says that the larger the firm, the faster the customer should get to that aha moment because there's better resourcing around onboarding. I think that's kind of BS. but whatever. So seven, like I think, it's just a function of how dialed the onboarding experience is and how thoughtful it is. And I don't care if you're doing 100 million in ARR, you got to resource that, you got to study it. That's a dark art, the onboarding motion. But you're shooting.
I would even argue that with a larger firm, it's like harder to decide on what the ideal onboarding experience is because there's so many opinions. It's product, there's finance, it's marketing support. Everyone has their own thought. But you go back to the user, like the experiment that we ran. If you're not sure, or there's a few different opinions, start to survey your users as they come in, monitor the actions they take as soon as they get in. What is that action that causes them to convert? And then start to reverse engineer into that after 3-6 months, you've got enough data.
Yeah, I would say the bigger the firm, the worse the onboarding experience because there's these bloated implementation teams and all these project plans and all this garbage. So, but I don't know.
Yeah, it starts to feel more like a tech-enabled services company.
Yeah, or it's like, dude, who's this person? It's like, oh, this person's onboarding this thing. And then when you're done with them, you'll talk to this person who's going to onboard this thing. and then we're going to bring in the person that's going to train you on all these things. And it's just like,
you make me feel like I'm talking to Salesforce. You got to go through 1,000 products with 30 AEs. And I'm like, no.
And here's a dictionary that has 10,000 terms that you should study. So anyway, down market 1 to 2 weeks. Up market, you're in kind of that 1 week spot. But I think you probably you want to get users in the thing, eating the dog food ASAP. Give just a quick win. How do you get that quick win super quick with wow, this is useful? And then it's about, kind of embedding that in that a habit loop into their reality where it's just like any other application, but you want them to start to come to that thing because when they do, they get a positive reward. Bing, 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 bing. And then you tighten that and you expand it. Weekly active users. So there's some different flavors here. And this one depends a lot on your context as well. Like the product, some products just don't rationalize daily active users. It's like you don't need to sign in on a daily basis to get value from this thing. So usually it resolves around weekly active users as kind of the middle ground between daily and monthly. And that's the one that you want to measure. And that's the number of users who engage with the product at least once per week. 15 to 25% is where it's at for down. And again, the assumptions that the more down market, the lower the weekly active users is a little flawed. These benchmarks are just super basic. And I think you want to be north of it. Assuming your product is something people should be logging into at least on a weekly basis, you want to see 40% and above, so you want at least half your people logging in on a weekly basis. And the most important thing is for you to establish base rates for yourself, and then be eyes wide on a rate of improvement for that one because it's so context dependent. So that's the product stuff. Anything to add to that, Kjael?
No, not at this one. Well, I was thinking on the time to first value, that may also depend on the software as well. Say you're using a data enrichment solution, you're really hoping that time to first value is within the first few hours because you have an immediate intention. You have an immediate need. I have a list. I need it enriched. It either works or it doesn't. If I can't get to that point in value literally within the first day, I'm moving on to the next data enrichment tool. So I say also know your product and understand the speed for that time to value as well against the benchmark.
Totally. So you need to adjust kind of for your go-to-market motion. Is it freemium, trial-based, or is it sales-led? Okay, that kind of should inform the KPIs that you fixate on that are super general there. Then think about your product in terms of what optimal usage looks like. And the context very depends on the product there. And go from there. Support, we've got time to response, time to resolution, tickets per day, and tickets per customer. And these ones are pretty straightforward. Time to response, I would just warn, is a vanity metric. And it's mostly automated, where it's hey, we got your ticket. You don't want to measure that. We got your thing. It's you want to measure, how reactive are we in a non-canned off-the-shelf manner, because we want to be as responsive as possible, assuming B2B. If there's an issue that's preventing your user from executing a workflow, they can't do their job. It's disruptive to their business. So the stakes are high. It's not oh, I logged into my feed and it was broken. It's I can't send an invoice and I need to get paid, right? And it's oh my God. Or man, people used to freak out when payroll would break. They're I need to pay, absolutely kick down the door, freaking out for obvious reasons. And it was very understandable. But when that phone rang, people were pissed. So time to response is a vanity metric. What you're really trying to measure is time to resolution. So we got a ticket. How fast did you resolve that issue? And the customer's on their way. And again, these benchmarks are a little wonky, but for time to response, it's smaller is 4 to 8 hours, larger is 1 to 4 hours. And again, just be woke that you're not measuring how fast you can send an automated email that confirms receipt of the ticket. That's just noise. Time to resolution, down market, you're looking for 1 to 2 days. Up market, you're looking for same day. I think for us, you're generally shooting for same day resolution no matter what. So like 8 hours on the top end and 4 hours, you're starting to punch pretty good. Tickets per day, and this is good. And depending on how mature the sales function is, you want to understand tickets per day per rep, because tickets per day implies like the overall volume, the overall load, and you want to be very thoughtful of how you distribute that load, because then you'll start to see upticks in time to resolution and all the other stuff. And also you want to look at tickets on a distribution, because that's our just find patterns in the tickets. And so your record keeping there, just classify them. Like, what category ticket is this? Is it a technical thing? Is it a how-to thing? Is it a bug? What module is it related to, or what area of the product does it touch? Because, you can find patterns there that are very useful on the product side, where it's like, we're getting all these tickets around this thing in the product. Instead of playing whack-a-mole, let's fix the product. Let's throw engineering resources at it and solve this problem downstream and prevent it from happening ever. And then tickets per customer. This one, you can assign a different time period as well. But you want to understand on average, how many tickets are we getting per customer? And we did per monthly. So you want probably 0.05 to 0.1 down market, where there's fewer customers, 0.1 to 0.2 up market, where you have more customers. And this is another one that you would also want to do on a client basis, specific basis. And so you start to understand, needy's the wrong word, but you want to start to understand who are your heaviest clients, like which clients require the most support. And then there's like, you want to rationalize that with whatever plan they're on. Like, are you giving them kind of support that's beyond the scope and the expectations that you've set of what the support function does? Is there an opportunity to introduce more of like a white glove support model for certain groups that would and support, if you're thoughtful, you can structure it as recurring revenue. It's obviously not SaaS kind of subscription revenue, but people are very liable to opt into a better support thing, because the better the support, the better the utilization of the SaaS, the more value is provided to the user. So support is a way to differentiate. No one likes to talk about that because it's so soft and tough to define. You can define it with metrics, and you can define it with retention, and you can kind of use those as like kind of, the hallmarks of your organization, and using that and pitching new customers to bring them on. But you can differentiate on support 100%, but it's human and it's time intense, and it scales linearly, usually with revenue. And we don't like any of those things.
Yeah, 100%. Especially when it comes to supporting large enterprise orgs with tons of users, and those users just want to hit the support channel all day. You got to figure out how much it's costing you to support that customer, and then how do you monetize that process?
Yeah, and be thoughtful with channels. Like, there's so much to be done right now. Like, the support function is getting absolutely turned upside down with the LLM revolution, because you can basically digest all of your internal documentation, all of your product documentation, etc., and train a model on that. And so you can have something that is completely technology driven be super useful to a user in a natural language kind of chatbot. And that will do a lot for your time to resolution, where it's like, dude, we don't, tier 1 stuff we don't even touch anymore, because we've got a little chatbot here that spews out stuff that's more accurate and more timely than anything a human could ever do on their best day. So anyway, we better not fall down that rabbit hole.
One other thought to add on that, and then we're done in that rabbit hole. So with the introduction of AI, an additional SEO hacking technique, which can drive not only leads to your website, but also support your current users. Instead of coming to your site and using a chatbot, if you were to build your knowledge base, and when you have those pages indexed with Google, set them up as like knowledge cards, what will happen is when people are just searching, like, hey, how do I, if that question relates anywhere near your tool, Google now has that AI solution will pop up and just start suggesting how they use something like that, and then it will recommend where that information came from like a blog or knowledge base related to your tool. So now it's not only answering the person's question, but it's driving leads to your website. So it's now a two-pronged approach.
Yeah, we like stuff like that. Excellent. All right, my man. Happy Friday to you. Extraordinary week. We'll get back on the horse next week. I'm gonna just go sit on the couch.
I was like,
man, wow. For the love of the game, laser beams. Wow, 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 wow. All right, buddy. I will catch you next week. Go get them. Enjoy your weekend.
Peace.